Kwei everyone, this is Steven Ojiri, and this video, or more this audio, is a book review. Antony Cummins has come out with a book called The Authentic Ninja Training Manual, Ninja Skills, or actually Ninja Skills is the title. And so Ninja Skills. The first thing you need to know about this book is that this book is not intended for long-time ninjutsu researchers or for people that are super deep into the topic. This book is amazing, but not for those reasons. Upon looking at this book, well, first thing, let's talk about the book itself. I like the way it's not a hardback book, but it's not a little kind of floppy paperback book. It's kind of a cardboard plastic cover that's a little bit oversized in the pages, so it gives it a very interesting feel. Usually, I don't care about the tactile aspect of a book, but this book has a very um, almost a modern day Dinsho effect. Kind of the size of it, like literally the size of the book, the bendiness of the cover, but without it being truly just paper kind of cover, and then the size in correlation to the pages and stuff. So I think Anthony was going to for a pseudo neo densho kind of effect here, and it's immediately noticeable. So kudos to that. That's pretty cool. The cover of it, typical kind of blah. Like the so anyway, the cover's not bad. I'm just saying that oh, ninja skills is red and black, shinobi kanji, etc., etc. But there's nothing wrong with that because that's exactly in line with what this book is about. So first off, let me say this is a great book. Some people would say, Stephen, why is it a great book? You just said that it doesn't go super deep into ninja research, et cetera, et cetera. The reason for that is this. As some of you know, some of you don't, some of you are listening to this, you don't even know who I am. You followed a link, clicked here, got here somehow. Some of you know who I am. So let me just do a quick review. My name is Steven Nojiri, and I have been doing Bushi, specifically Bushi spy research for a long time. The public has known about me doing research for about 10 years, but I've been doing it more than 10 years. But let's just focus on the last decade. For the last decade, people like me and Anthony used to work on the same team for a while. And we still good friends. We still work on projects occasionally, et cetera, et cetera. So uh, we've been working on trying to go super deep into the research, like deep into the research, give translations of ancient documents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For some people, that works. But what we have noticed after a decade is that for a lot of people, it's simply too complicated. It's too much at one time. It is just literally, it's not accessible for many people. And so my take on it was I kind of was like, well, I put the books out and I put the research out, and whoever can access it, and that's just the way it is. Anthony, on the other hand, has taken a slightly different approach. He's done books like this one, Ninja Skills, which it's simple but it's accessible. It takes a lot of the information, simplifies it, makes it accessible to everybody. So people who could understand the complicated material will understand this. And people who would have struggled with and had issues with the complicated material will be able to understand this book. The book, let me see, how many pages is it? It's about 200 pages, give or take. Um, it's broken into sections. It's it's mimicking to some extent the Bansen Shukai in the sense that it goes through, like, it starts off with fundamental concepts, and then it has a section for infiltration skills, then a section for climbing skills, then a section for escaping skills, then a section for night attack skills. So it goes through, in other words, this book is mimicking a shinobi manual. Also mimicking a shinobi manual, you have each lesson, each section is broken down. So rather than saying section 1 or section 2, it says lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson, 11, 12, etc. Each lesson has a title, has about a paragraph of writing, and then a picture to go with it. Some sections have multiple pictures, some sections have just one picture. But the point of the matter being is it's extremely accessible. Like if you had difficulty when you were reading the Bansen Shukai translation or any of the other translations, if you had difficulty comprehending what was being explained, it this book is been created for you. This book, it's really, I was actually impressed at first when I'll be honest, when I was first flipping through it, I was like, oh my God, this is very fundamental. This is rudimentary, you know? However, reading it and really going through it, looking at it, et cetera, I realized this is actually very genius because it doesn't contain, the techniques in here are a mixture of things from the Shoninki, the Bansen Shukai, and different Natoriru ninja, the Natoriru ninja material. And of course, because Antony Cummins does it, it's going to have an insane amount of Natoriru. So Shoninki is Natoriru, and there's also other Natoriru documents, different ninja manuals, ninja sections of other manuals, and then of course the Bansen Shukai. So he's gone through and he's pulled stuff from the Bansen Shukai, stuff from the Shoninki, and stuff from the other Natoriru manuals, and he's categorized them into this pseudo ninja manual. And in this form, it works very well. Some in like for example, now for those of you who actually sat down and read the Bensen Shukai either in the original Japanese or in the English translation, you know that in the Bensen Shukai there are many sections where Fujibayashi Sensei just gives you the name of the technique and like two or three sentences, a real quick summation of the technique, and then goes on. So even the fact that every technique has about a paragraph with a picture is technically consistent with the way that many shinobi manuals actually exist in real life. You get one technique with a few sentences, one technique with a few sentences, one technique with a few sentences. Now, some shinobi manuals go more in depth, but many of them are just that one technique with a little bit. And of course, the reason that they're like that is because they're not meant to teach you, they're meant to be a reminder, a sort of memory aid for the things that you learned in person. But so what I'm getting at is that this book does an excellent job at mimicking that feeling. And then because it has a good, paragraph with a picture, a paragraph with a picture, a paragraph with a picture, there's a little bit of Japanese thrown in there. There's not a whole lot of Japanese thrown in there, but when it's thrown in there, it's nice because though it's you have the Roman letters like in English, the like you have the kanji, the kana, and then you have how to pronounce it in English letters. So that makes it easy for people. They can sort of slowly learn how to pronounce the different kanji. They'll be able to recognize key kanji. They'll know how to pronounce it, and it's done in very easy way. It's like the kanji is in red boxes. The kanji is in white on red boxes, so you have these red boxes with white kanji and kana, and then in bold black letters is the English lettering. So it's very easy for people to like know this is the word and this is the how it's pronounced and this is its translation, this is its meaning. And it doesn't try to throw 15, 20 words at you at a time. It throws one or two at you at a time. So it's very accessible for anybody. Pictures, diagrams, it goes on and on and on. It's actually the longer I looked at it and read through it, the more I was impressed with it. Again, if you are well versed in shinobi teachings and lessons and manuals, there's nothing in here that's going to surprise you or wow you because you will be well familiar with all of this. However, that having been said, you should, I know I do. I appreciate and I find it very helpful for the community, for the samurai research and the ninja research and the ninja enthusiast community, that a book like this would exist. And I hope that Anthony continues to put books out like this. Of course, obviously, I'm, like we're gonna like Anthony is, I am, me and Anthony may work on projects in the future, things like that. We will put out books. I will put out books. He will put out books that are complicated and academic, et cetera, et cetera. But it would also be nice if we continue this trend of, we have one set of books that is very academic and complicated, and then we have another set of books that are very accessible. Again, it's it's not a simple book. It's an accessible book. What has happened is that the information has been refined into a way that is accessible for anybody. So people who already know this information or quick, intelligent, they have a penchant for, this kind of academic material, they will be able to read the book and understand it. People who like the material but they have a weakness towards complex academic material, they will still be able to read this and clearly understand it. So that's one of the key things that we have to say here. This book is not a simple book. This book is an accessible book. The material has been arranged and presented in a way that everybody can comprehend it, and not comprehend it just not in a simple way, but in a complete way. Like, of course, each one of the techniques in here can be discussed deeper and developed deeper, but the way it's put in the book cuts straight to the core of, like, okay, what is this technique? What is this technique? What is this technique? What is this technique? And again, like I said, okay, so that's hopefully that gives you a general idea of what the book is. Essentially, it is 200 pages, and each page is one or two entries for a technique with a picture and a paragraph saying this is this technique and this is what it does. Boom, this is this technique and this is what it does. There's a couple of, throughout the book, there's a couple places here and here where it gives you some idea about maybe, like, um, let's see. So, like, there's occasionally in and out, through the book, there are lessons or entries of a technique that doesn't necessarily have a particular skill. It's more like just a teaching, and then but in those cases there's a skill that's attached to it, which is like a, now that you've sort of had this quick introduction to the teaching, this is a possible shinobi application to that thing. So anyway, long story short, those of you who are well read and studied in Bansen Shukai, Shonin Ki, etc., you will recognize all of these techniques. But it may be very interesting for you to see them presented in this accessible way. For those of you who are not familiar, and for those of you who were challenged to read the Book of Ninja, the Bansen Shukai English translation, etc., you would probably very much appreciate this book, because the same materials that's in there is done in a very clear and concise and very accessible way for you. So those are the positives of the book. I recommend the book. So let me be honest. I recommend this book. I showed this book to several of my family members, to several friends, to several other people. This book, everyone agrees across the board to different levels. Not everybody agrees to the same level, but across the board, there's a general approval of the book. And for the reasons that I've stated, it takes a well, not a fully comprehensive, but it takes a general overview of the main shinobi text, and it presents you the a majority of the techniques in a very clear and accessible way. So again, if you're well versed, you might find it a little bit remedial, but you may still also just appreciate the fact that this has been presented, this exists now. You could hand this book to somebody who is brand new to ninja research, and if they were to read this book, they would have a complete leg up. They wouldn't have to take years of reading through the translations to try to comprehend it. A book like this, an accessible book like this, can take somebody from so on a scale from 0 to 10, it can take them from 0 to 5, 0 to 6 immediately. And for a single book to take someone from 0 to 6 is pretty impressive. Like if I ran into somebody that said, I like ninja, I don't know anything about ninja, I would be like, well, read this book first. Of course, after they read the book, I would want them to go more in depth but I would hand them this book first. I'd say, look, read this book first. Get a general idea. And that's what this book will give you, a general idea, a good solid introduction in an accessible form. And then, then after that, let's go more in depth. So this book is best for people who are just entering the ninja research or the ninja enthusiast path. This is an excellent book for people that are just entering. I say path, career path, addiction, whatever it is. All right, so that's all the positive stuff. Let's take a moment to look at some of the some of the negatives. I don't really have any negatives, no strong negatives. Let's see. The Oh, I also forgot. And there's some appendices. Oh, let's talk about the appendices here. There's an appendices that gives a quick look or quick but accessible look at how Ninja Scrolls exist. For example, levels of the page 198 says levels of accessibility, and that's what we're talking about here. This is all about accessibility. That's the key word. Okay, that's the buzzword, accessibility. So Ninja Scrolls tend to come in three levels of accessibility. You have level one is, in this book he says, enigmatic, which basically means it's the name of the technique with possibly a memory hook, and then it'll usually say, Kuden. So it's very inaccessible to everybody other than exactly who it was meant for. Level two, you have insightful scrolls, which will give you the name of the technique, and then they will give you some information about what the technique is. And then level three is descriptive, and that would be a ninja manual that actually really goes into the detail of each technique. And again, so that's what Appendix 1 is about, is this issue of accessibility. And again, it's not just the appendix, this whole book is one project about accessibility. Appendix 2 goes into military tactics of the 7 military classics, which is excellent because now, if you are brand new to the field of samurai, ninja, enthusiasm, research, etc., and this is one of the first books you're reading, your primer, so to speak, to get you sort of from 0 to 5 or 0 to 6, then you have an appendice over here, which is going to be ridiculously helpful to you as the years go on, that just basically introduces you to the 7 military classics. And it gives you kind of an overview of that. It's not a very long or hardcore overview, but it's a accessible overview. Something that somebody can go from 0 to 5 with the book, right? And that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about going from 5 to 10. We're talking about going from 0 to 5, 0 to 6. If you took this book, if you knew nothing and you were just starting out and you read this book, it would probably take you from 0 to 4, 0 to 5, potentially 0 to 6. But if you took this book and then began researching in depth the different pieces, the different lessons in the book, then yeah, it would take you from 0 to 5, potentially 6, open the door to get you to 7 or 8. You see what I'm saying? It's a very good primer. It's a very good beginning, very good start, and a very good review book for those who are already at 5 or 6. The diagrams in here are fairly good. Okay, so some of the diagrams are not super helpful. There's some that are very helpful, and some of them are not super helpful. Most of them, though, are super helpful. I got to be honest. It's kind of I do get a laugh out of seeing Anthony and his friends superimposed on backgrounds. Some of the pictures are pictures of like Anthony and his friends. You know how people who know his books know how he does that. Pictures of him and his friends with their heads cut off and being stabbed and standing guard and stuff like that. Um, Again, most of the pictures, most of the diagrams are very helpful. Some of them are they're not really helpful. They're just a picture. They have some level of value to the explanation, but not much. So they vary, but most of them are extremely on point. So I have to give credit to the team that made the book because most of them are pretty on point. Many of the diagrams are taken from the old manuals, but some of them are taken directly from the old manuals, but and sort of redrawn. Some of them are. I'm looking at them now. Sorry, I'm sort of like I know, like for those like basically like I know. If anybody knows Japanese, they know what I know means. So I'm going through the book just saying I know. Anyway, the point of the matter is. Um, I am looking at the different pictures, trying to remind myself, trying to find a bad one. I'm not really finding a bad one. I was going to try to find a bad one and point it out, but there's not really a bad one that I'm seeing. So, oh, actually, okay, hold on. The one on page 42 isn't bad, but I should slap Anthony for that one. It's, if anybody gets the book and they see the picture on page 42, it makes sense. It makes sense in regard to the lesson, but you should slap Anthony for that picture. I'd probably have done the same thing though. I can't really. Anyway, okay, so yeah, the pictures are pretty amazing. Most of them are on point. Some of the pictures come from old manuals. Most of them are redrawn so that they are a little bit more clear. Uh, those of you those of you who are familiar with old Japanese manuals know that a lot of the pictures are drawn from a very particular kind of way of conceptualizing pictures of techniques and pictures of equipment. Long story short, to Western eyes, they don't make immediate sense. Once you know what the technique or the tool is, you can reverse engineer the diagram and you're like, okay, it makes sense once I know what it is. But it's really hard to figure out what the hell's going on before I know what it is. Um, but so a lot of the pictures in this book have been redrawn in a way that makes it more understandable. For example, and also what's interesting is in the infiltrations skills section, let's see, page 60, 61, 62, 63. Uh, there's the way these pictures are done is very good because, for example, it's talking about how one shinobi will be on this side of the building holding a candle in through a hole while a shinobi on the other side of the building will be there. And rather than just telling you that and sort of like assuming you can visualize it, there's diagrams here of like screen doors with people in between and one person on one side, one person on the other side. So that is done very well. And I think that definitely I give Anthony a hand clap for that one because somebody taking the time to create pictures, diagrammed pictures of that is nice. Is nice. Again, many people didn't need the pictures. They understood. They know how Japanese architecture is. They know what the rooms look like. They know what hallways look like, et cetera, et cetera. They know what courtyards, pavilions, all that. But if for people, again, this is not a book for people who are long-term researchers or enthusiasts, etc. This is really a book that is meant to make it accessible for people who are just getting started. People that want to know something about ninja but they're just getting started should read this book, Ninja Skills by Antony Cummins, to quickly go from 0 to 5, 0 to 6 and have a very good introduction and a very sound and accessible introduction so that then they can proceed forward to more complicated topics without getting super confused along the way. Um, do I have okay? So something negative because you is it's is kind of inappropriate to do a book review and only say how great the book is. You got to kind of find some problems with it. Um, other than the problem with Anthony's picture on page 42, which again makes sense, but I should slap him for it. Let's see what else. Um, again, at first I was going to say that the book leans heavily toward. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff in here. No, I can't really. Okay, the only thing that I can really say is that some people could argue that some of the material in here, again, is oversimplified, but again, it's not oversimplified. It's being made accessible for people. The This book is not meant to be the final level of study. This book is meant to sort of introduce a concept to you. So the concept is not going to go deep, and and metaphors and similes used for the concept, some people may think, oh, that's not a great one, or there's better ones. And there are better ones. That many times in this book, you could argue that that could have been taught better, or that could have been taught deeper. And you're right. You're absolutely right. It could. So, like, but it's not meant to be a final Bible. It's meant to be an introduction, a primer, an accessible text. So I would say that I can't. I mean, if I sat down here and really picked it apart, I could probably find a lot of little problems here and there. Oh, I disagree with this, I disagree with that. But those problems would be not problems with the book. They would be places where I disagreed with with the information, but the information would still had still been presented like correctly and reasonably within the context. So I'm going to give the book a B plus or an A, right? Let's let's give it I'll give the book an A minus. I think that the book is excellent for what its purpose is. As an introductory book, as a book that is trying to make the fundamental understanding of ninja accessible to anybody who picks the book up. The book is successful. Would I have written some of the sections differently? Of course I would have. But I didn't write the book. Anthony wrote the book. The book has a definitive Bansen Shukai and Natoriru lean to it. It totally, you know, you could accuse Anthony of sort of pushing some Natori propaganda into the book, and you would be correct. However, it is Anthony's book, and we know that it will always have some Natori propaganda aspect to it, right? So I think if you understand the book for what it is and you don't demand that it be something that it's not trying to be, I think you'll find that it's a very sound book, and that the only real problem people I could see people having with it is personal issues. Like, I don't think that was explained correctly, or I think that should have been explained this way, that way. But again, that discussion, I think it should have been better. I think it should have been done this way. That comes at levels 6, 7, 8. That comes at like after the person has a basic introduction. So once the material is made accessible, once the person has a general understanding because of the accessible information, then we can get into discussing refined and more correct, deeper explanations of the material. But this book is trying to take somebody from 0 to 5, and it does that very well. And so I really have to give credit. I mean, I would love, oh, and you guys know, I would love to rip Anthony a new one over this book, but I can't, because the book does its job, and it does its job well. Um, it makes me wonder. And so now we have a ninja skill book. It would be interesting if Anthony. So honestly, I'm going to go out and say I hope that Anthony does a samurai skill book like this to sort of be out there for people to go 0 to 5 on general samurai stuff. Now, my only concern, of course, is that we know that that samurai skill book will basically be Natori samurai skill book. So when he makes, if he ever makes a samurai skill book, I hope that he is clear that it is Natori Ryu trained samurai skill book, because obviously, um, it like that's probably the only thing about this book that I can say is like just know that everything in this book is comes from the Bansen Shukai and comes from Natori-ryu. Other schools are not really represented in the book. So a reader of this book will be heavily swayed or heavily influenced by Natori skills and by Fujibayashi sensei's teachings. But again, if we're only going from 0 to 5, that's not a problem. If we were going from 7 to 8, that would be an issue. But going from 0 to 5, 0 to 6, it's not really an issue. Because of course, Natoriru, of course, it's going to be flavored with Natoriru. But remember, Fujibayashi sensei's teachings are composed of many different traditions, sort of put into one. Um, this is where I cough and say, mostly Kusunoki, cough, cough. So, for those of you who are familiar with my involvement with Kusunoki Ryu studies and stuff, I will clearly go on record and say that a vast majority of the uh, first part of the Bansen Shukai is Kusunoki Ryu material. But so you have Kusunoki Ryu, and then you have the whole end of the book. The Tenmon section is taken from Chinese manuals. The Gunpo Jioshu is literally the end without the most of the ending is lifted from the Gunpo Jioshu. Like I have the copy of the volume of the Gunpo Jioshu where most of the stuff is lifted from, and I have the Kusunoki manuals from which most of the first volumes are lifted from too. But that's the point of the matter being, Fujibayashi openly says that his Bansen Shukai is composed of multiple documents. So because Anthony is basing this book on Natori and the Bansen Shukai, we get Natori and then we get 10 plus other influences systems into the manual, and it gives it again a very good foundation for accessibility. So again, from 0 to 5 as an accessible book, a book about accessibility to get ninja skills accessible to anyone who picks the book up. The book does an excellent job. So I approve of the book. Lord Nojiri approves of the book. It has my blessing. But so if you're a long-standing ninja researcher, I can't really say you should buy the book or not because I know the book will seem old news to you. And so it's up to you. Obviously, it's always up to you, but I'm saying I can't really issue a statement on that because I know that it will seem old news to you. If you have the spare cash, I think it's a nice collection. I think it would be an interesting read, and I think that you could have it on hand to loan to somebody. It would be a good purchase. Um, you wouldn't really learn anything new. But for someone who's brand new to the field, I think they should go ahead and get the cash up and buy the book, read it, and be like, okay, these are the fundamental accessible sort of things that I need to understand. If I'm gonna understand Shinobi, I should understand these 100 some odd points. And so I would say for those people, definitely you should if you have the money, just get it. If you're short on cash, stick $1 away every week, and then after a while, buy the book. You know what I mean? Whatever. It's I don't. Where's the book? I can't even remember. I think it's like $20, right? So it's like $20, guys. $20. So if you if you're new to the ninja field and you want a primer, like a book that will make it quickly accessible, you should consider getting the book. Um, so I will, like I said, I will approve the book. I will say that you should get the book. If you're a long timer, I can't issue a statement on that because again, I know that you may not find a whole, well, again, like I said, if you're an old timer, it might be interesting to sort of see how these fundamentals are presented. It might inspire you in some way. But it would be interesting to get it and have it in case you ever needed to loan it to somebody. Like you run into somebody and they are brand new, and you can just be like, look, we'll talk about this, but you should really read through this book first. Once you read through this book, then we can talk more. And again, if you're brand new to the field, you should just get it, because honestly, it is a great overview. It's very accessible. The points that are discussed in there, you need to have a fundamental understanding on, and you'll get it if you read. And if you read through the book, pay attention to the book, you will skip years of running in circles. And then you can access the more complicated books and the more complicated material without much ado, because you'll already have a good grounding on it. So that is that. So that is my book review and my ultimate approval of Anthony's book, Ninja Skills. And I do plan on putting up a couple of more audio commentaries to different things in the near future. So if you guys are interested, just stay tuned.